Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Attacking 2 podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Funnell. It's a bit dark here today, but thankfully I am joined, as always, by my fellow host, Lawrence Vescoli. Lawrence, say hello.
Hello. I mean, obviously, great to be back. This time, Jimmy introing it. And great guest today. Great guest.
Absolutely. We have the incredible Alex Goldberg, Chelsea shooting star, the face of Chelsea Twitter. Alex, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Oh, it's very kind of you guys. That's quite flattering. It's a pleasure to be on, though.
Unfortunately, Alex can't join us with video today, so you'll just have to go and visit his podcasts to see him in person. But for today, we will be talking about loads of topics, especially, of course, everything revolving around Chelsea, the youth, and some very pressing issues like Jay Da Silva, who has just been announced. But before we start today's podcast, as always, please do follow the Attacking 2 podcast and our individual accounts on Twitter. The handles will be in the description below. Also, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is just about to hit those 300 subscribers. It'd be massively appreciated, as always. Okay, so Alex, welcome once again. Great to have you back on the podcast. How are you doing, mate? How's the podcast? I mean, massive congratulations to this huge success of the Byline podcast.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a bit unexpected how well it's turned out the first few months. I definitely had aspirations for it, high aspirations for it. And I knew I was going to give it a lot of effort and definitely stack it up with guests. That's the big thing for me on why I started it. Was I was doing my YouTube channel, but that was just me giving my raw reactions after games and doing rants, etc., which I'll do again for sure. I'll restart that very soon. But I just had so many people I wanted to speak to, I wanted to interview. So I figured, I don't really mess around with video technology all that much. So instead of doing that on my YouTube channel, I just decided it was time to start my own podcast. So fast forward a few months later, and it's going better than I ever could have expected it. Yeah.
I mean, you've had some incredible guests on, for us Chelsea fans, Reece James is one of those players everyone wants to see succeed right now. Tony Mount, if I'm not mistaken, Gabriel Macotti has been the latest one. I mean, how is it to speak with such huge personalities, not only those that are not affiliated with the club, but especially ones that are even playing for Chelsea Football Club right now?
Oh, man, it's been pretty wild. It's been definitely kind of a time where when I book one of them or I'm talking to one of them offline about just coming on, I have to pinch myself every once in a while, just on some of them, for sure, because I tweeted this the other day, but if a year ago you told me that I would have had 3 episodes in a row of Howard Webb, Reece James, and Gab Marcotti, I definitely would have thought you were nuts. But it's been probably the most fun part for me is the networking and the booking of guests. And the fact that I do try to make my guests topical, like I want them to be relevant. I don't want to just get a guest to agree to be on, and then because they agreed just to have them on right away. I still want to deliver the best content possible for my listeners and make it there actually be a reason as to why I'm having them on. So I definitely don't want to just book guests randomly, but definitely booking the guests and designing the show and writing the interviews has been really a lot of fun. And I only hope to keep doing it more and more and more. And I know I'm surprising some people with the guests that I've been booking, but I just want to keep surprising myself, to be honest. And at this point, people will make jokes about who I'll book next, but I definitely plan for way more surprises.
Let them make their jokes. Let them make their jokes.
That's a good joke to have. That's a very good joke to have.
Yeah.
It's certainly been going well, but obviously, you are our guest at Mr. Alex Goldberg. But as you do and as we do love to talk about Chelsea mostly. So let's get into talking about Chelsea. And of course, Jimmy and myself have spoken about it, at length on here, and I'm sure you've spoken about it yourself. Of course, everybody follow Alex Goldberg on Twitter, although chances are everyone watching this has already followed Alex Goldberg. So there is that chance. But of course, just quickly, if you want to run down your, like I say, opinion, Sarri has left. Frank Lampard is about to join us, even if it's still not been announced when we thought last week. It might be announced by the time this comes out. Still not been announced. Who knows when it will happen? It will happen, though. People really need to take a bit of a chill pill. Whether it happens today, tomorrow, or next week doesn't make that much of a difference as long as it happens, at least in advance of when preseason starts. As long as it happens before then, it's not that big a deal because, preseason has been planned a long, long time ago and had nothing to do with Frank Lampard and wouldn't have changed no matter which manager comes in. But just quickly, Alex, what did you make of it? Did you think Maurizio Sarri's season was a bit of a waste now because you left after one season and, the whole Frank Lampard situation? Are you excited? Are you a bit nervous? Are you both? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't like the narrative that Maurizio Sarri's season was a waste because I don't understand how a season can be a waste if you get third in the Premier League, you get the team back into the Champions League, and you get a Europa League trophy. So I understand why people say it because they feel like having Sarri for only one season in the big scheme of things is a waste because you wanted to really revolutionize the team with Sarri's system. But I'm sorry, just the season itself is not a waste. It can't be with those accomplishments. Now, I definitely think Maurizio Sarri, quote unquote, deserved to stay. I think that is something that really should be unanimously agreed upon, whether you were a Sarri fan or not. He achieved what the goals were for everybody, and he had a lot of things going against him. So that's something that I'm very firm on, that by season's end, he deserved to stay. Now, it was a roller coaster ride, and I'm not surprised that it was because he kind of came as advertised. His weaknesses or the things that annoy people about him were definitely there this past season. And then some of the positives to Maurizio Sarri were also there. So it's never boring with Maurizio Sarri. It's never boring with Chelsea. And that's why it was such an up and down year. But like I said, it ended well. Now, the fact that Juventus came a knocking for him, I think that now that we totally know everything that has transpired ever since the end of the Europa League final, I think it makes perfect sense for Maurizio Sarri, first and foremost, that he left. I mean, what a great way to build your career. I think Chelsea fans who might be a little butthurt at Sarri for leaving or angry at the board for allowing him to leave, and really angry at Chelsea. When I say the board, that's really only a couple people anyway. I think they just need to think about it like Maurizio Sarri wanted to leave for this Juventus job. He came from almost nothing. He was a banker, then he was in lower divisions, then he went to Napoli and was fantastic, but couldn't get past Juve. Then, boom, he goes to the Premier League, has a pretty good season, and before getting sacked, because guess what, that inevitably happens with Chelsea if you don't do well, he took the chance to take the greatest job in his home country, and who wouldn't? So I don't blame him, and I think Chelsea fans need to look at it from that perspective. And on the Chelsea side of things, it's not like they fought him too hard on it because they're resigned to taking this transfer ban. And I think because of the situation they're in, they weren't going to fight tooth and nail for Sarri to stay and beg and plead. He wanted to go, and they're willing to take a calculated risk and go another direction.
Agreed. And at the same time, you could also say how many managers at Chelsea have actually managed to leave without getting sacked in the Roman Abramovich era. That's not many.
Exactly.
So you could actually say that's an achievement in itself, I guess.
Yeah.
But
that's quite, that's true. I mean, only the caretaker managers, right? If I'm not mistaken, there's been the caretaker managers, and I think there was one other manager that didn't get the sack, but I'm not sure anymore.
Benitez didn't get sacked, I don't think.
Benitez, that was it, yeah. But he was pretty much a caretaker as well.
Well,
anyway,
that's the thing. If you can leave on your own terms at Chelsea, take that chance.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I guess he will have a legacy, unfortunately, which is similar to Rafael Benitez, which isn't fair on Maurizio Sarri. I think everyone should understand his choice. And the hostilities that were permanently the case will have contributed to his choice. I'm pretty sure about that. But Maurizio Sarri is in the past now. One has to realise that and stop all the Sarri in, Sarri out, which is still kind of the case on Twitter, unfortunately. But Lampard is coming in, as we already said. kind of an unknown entity to many people who haven't watched Derby games last season. He's only had one campaign under his belt now. I mean, we don't know much about his preferences. We don't know if he will definitely utilize our youth. Will he initially start the veterans? We don't know. But Alex, what are your expectations of Lampard for this season? Because I think that is one of the key things. Will one accept a top 6 finish, or even worse, maybe? Hopefully not. Will there be youth integration? Can we still look forward to this?
Well, to answer your last question first, absolutely. I'm still looking forward to the season, and it's not because I'm somebody that hypes up youth. I think the rather unknown of the season is exciting in and of itself, to be honest. And I also think expectation-wise, the shouts for 10th place or worse are just ridiculous. I mean, I think the people who are shouting for 10th or worse on Twitter are trying to get likes, or they're just trying to really be negative. And negativity, guys, is a trend these days. I mean, it's totally a trend, and it's something that people, if they don't know what to say, they'll just be negative. And if they end up not being accurate with their negativity, they can just play it off as, oh, I was joking. I was just, I was kind of being tongue in cheek. So 10th place, I know it happened. I know it happened not too long ago, but that season really was an aberration. Everything went wrong that season. That season was so toxic, such a mess. So I don't think it's going to be 10th. Now, realistic expectations for actually where they'll finish, that's tough. It's just so tough because you have so many factors at hand, and half the questions you just asked to me there, we just don't know. Will he play youth? Will he go with the veterans right away? What are the other teams? What are the other teams going to look like? What are Manchester United and Arsenal going to look like? They have such huge question marks right now. So there's so many factors at hand. Are Leicester City going to be able to keep half of their prized players? Probably not. I hear all these accounts, even accounts I'm very friendly with, say, oh, we'll be lucky to make it past all of Leicester and Wolves and all those teams. But how do you know a team like Leicester is even going to keep their players? I get it. I get the negativity, but the big hit, let's be real, the big hit is losing Eden Hazard. I mean, that's just the flat out big hit. That's really the only hit that happened here, unless you want to say, obviously, losing Maurizio Sarri. So I expect Frank to have ups and downs, but I expect a lot of things to actually be a lot steadier. I expect the vibe within the club and really at Stamford Bridge to be much better. I think if fans can prepare themselves for just bad games, but not bad games because necessarily their manager's frustrating them, but bad games because obviously everything's a work in progress. I think if people can shift their expectations a little bit, it really will be a much more balanced and smooth season. But yeah, you are going to have to change your expectations a little bit. Now, right out of the get-go, I don't expect a lot to be different with how Lampard puts out his team. I mean, there's injuries obviously at hand, so you're not going to see Reece James start right away anyway. We'll see about Hudson-Odoi. I mean, he's making phenomenal progress, but still, it could easily be Willian and Pulisic. And Loftus-Cheek's not going to be out there right away, so you're probably going to see a Barkley. So when you're looking at it realistically, you're going to see a lot of the same players. You're going to see a lot of veterans out there. But I do think over time, Frank, because he's new and because he's going to view Chelsea as clay that needs to be molded, I do think youth will have a much better opportunity to stake their claim and really take a spot. And I'm excited for Frank because I think he's a great football mind. And I know some could be like, well, he only had one season. How do you think that? But no, I think in listening to him over the years as a player and watching him as a player and watching his year at Derby fairly closely, I think he is a great football mind. And guys, I think Jody Morris is also a great football mind. And I'm excited to see what they can build. I really am. I think Jody Morris is almost just as important as bringing Frank Lampard in. But let's be real, I can't really give a great prediction, nor can anyone, because there's so many unknowns.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with a lot of what you said. Me personally, I do want to add that, the whole youth thing, the whole only having, one season as a professional manager or whatever. Like you said, we just don't know. We don't know what he's gonna do. The one thing that I don't know, and what you just said that you hope for, is that the fans kind of expect a little bit less. Expect, and not necessarily because of Lampard, but because of the squad, because of losing Hazard, because of a lot of injuries. But do we actually expect Chelsea fans to understand that? I mean, they didn't understand last season. Like, I personally didn't expect, like, I don't know, beating Man City and Liverpool last season, but still everyone else seemed to expect that for whatever reason. I know we lost 6-0 to Man City and 4-0 to Bournemouth. I know that, and that was harsh. But the season before that, we lost 3-0 to Bournemouth and 4-1 to Watford. So it's not like things were that drastically different. So that is the only thing I'm not sure Chelsea fans will understand, that, you know, yes, we have Frank Lampard back, but he was the greatest ever player. So why isn't he the greatest ever manager now? That's what sometimes some Chelsea fans feel like when they start, you know, just insulting our own manager when we're at that moment of time, I don't know, fourth and in the Europa League quarterfinal or something. You know, sometimes I just feel like a little bit of intelligence would be good. I know I might be a bit harsh than other people dare to speak out online, but it just frustrates me over time, quite frankly. I mean, you know, you did say that we don't know for sure whether, you know, the youth players will play their part, but then you also mentioned Jody Morris, and me personally, I do believe that Jody Morris will have a big role to play in why I think that youth will play quite a big role, especially this season, but also in seasons moving forward, because, like I say, he knows them, and we have the transfer ban. The transfer ban is something you touched upon earlier, and obviously, I just want to quickly know from you: do you think inherently is it a bit of a blessing in disguise, or is it a bad thing, or is it just a mixture of both?
Well, with as much as I like the youth, I can certainly argue that it's a blessing in disguise. I think I'm a decent enough debater that I can argue that it's a blessing in disguise, but I just don't know. I think it could be a blessing in disguise. I think it can turn out to be a blessing in disguise if, yes, like you said, maybe even Jody Morris pushes for some of the youth to be used more. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the season, we know Reece James is legit. And we know Reece James is absolutely going to confirm what we think, that he is going to be one of the best right backs in the league. And yes, the transfer ban gives us that opportunity because we don't even have to worry about an El Said Husai from Napoli coming over. We don't have to worry about any of that. And a Mason Mount, obviously, Jody Morris and Frank might give Mason Mount opportunities, maybe just in cup games to start, but to show what he's got. And if he can beat out a Ross Barkley, and by the end of the season, he can show us that he can score more than a Barkley and, of course, a Kovacic, then all right. Now, once again, we're on our way to figuring out what we have in Mason Mount. And if Callum Hudson-Odoi gets close to starters minutes this season, instead of acquiring, by the way, another winger who, I'm not saying it would be Coutinho. I'm just saying there are other wingers out there who people are kind of like full in on, and then some people are kind of fully out on. And in this situation, now we're going to get to see plenty of Callum Hudson-Odoi. And I don't know about you, but I would love to take the risk and give Callum Hudson-Odoi a whopping a lot of minutes and see what we got in him, because the reward in giving Hudson-Odoi a lot of minutes greatly outweighs the risk. I mean, it greatly outweighs the risk. So yeah, you can definitely argue that the transfer ban could end up being a blessing in disguise. Now, there are certain positions where, yeah, I would probably help to upgrade right now. I mean, I think Tammy Abraham deserves a chance, but don't get me wrong. I obviously, if given the choice, if we could have a transfer ban but still acquire a striker, I would do that, obviously, because I think we all can agree a striker is just something that probably needs to be improved upon, no matter how much we rate the youth. But there are some positions, I guess. I'll answer your question saying there's some positions where the transfer ban could be a blessing in disguise, because I really do rate your Reece Jameses, your Callum Hudson-Odois, and I know Mason Mount splits opinions for some, but for me, I rate him, and I think it'd be a great thing if we got to see what he has this season.
I think that is also a very sound way of approaching it, because we can't just say, you know, it's great, this is going to be the best time for Chelsea not having a transfer ban. I can't, you know, I think it's a ban, it's a punishment for a reason, and we aren't able to buy the striker. We missed out on Jovic. I don't know if we would have been really in for him, but still, it hurts. And the same as, you know, if the strikers don't work out, which they haven't for ages now, since Diego Costa and Drogba before him, we have a problem there. But we can only hope then that someone can step into Eden Hazard's shoes and contribute in regard to goals and assists. And as we were talking about Callum Hudson-Odoi, or as you like to term him, the chosen one, which I must say is still one of the best hashtags on Twitter. How do you think he'll play in Lampard's system? You said that he certainly deserves the minutes, all the minutes he can get, and he could very well thrive this season. I mean, can we already expect him to be anything near? Of course, we can't expect him to be Hazard. That'll be very unfair, grossly unfair. But anything near the winger or the player that we all know he can be already this season?
Well, I think a huge part is how is he going to look after his injury? I mean, clearly he's recovering well, but with those Achilles injuries, sometimes it still does kind of have a layover even once you're fully fit. So there's definitely a variable there. But I think if he really does look pretty fit and he gets a lot of preseason in and he gets a lot of minutes, and he should. I mean, he absolutely should. The only thing that could prevent him from getting the minutes that we want him to get is the fact that Willian's best position is left wing. Christian Pulisic's best position in Pulisic and his father's mind is left wing. I know he's played a lot of right wing, but in their mind, it's left wing. So that obviously means that technically Willian, Pulisic, and Hudson-Odoi are all best on the left wing. But once again, Frank Lampard and Jody Morris very much rate Callum Hudson-Odoi. So I do think he'll get the opportunities. And it's not like he's bad on the right wing. It's just where will he play and will he be able to play both? I mean, my goal, honestly, is for Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi to interchange wings. I love when wingers interchange wings. And if they can figure that out and they can actually interchange and it's not a big hit to the defense, great. But what can we see out of Hudson-Odoi? I mean, yeah, if people want Eden Hazard this next season, dream on, obviously. But I really think we can see a full breakout season if he's given the time for it, because he's just ready. And I think the mentality of Callum Hudson-Odoi is important. I mean, when did this kid really look phased? I guess you could say he obviously didn't play great against Liverpool. He was going up against Andy Robertson and he was on the right wing. So I'm not cutting him a complete excuse, but I don't think he looked phased. I just don't think he had a great game. But look, his first start for England, did he look phased? No. How about the game after for Chelsea, the day after he handed in a transfer request? He went on and scored a goal. Has he ever really looked phased? Like the bright lights are too big for him? No. How about the way he handled the racism? Brilliantly. I mean, I just think he's beyond his years in terms of his mentality. So I think he's ready to go. I really do. And I think if given the game time we all expect for him, he can definitely be one of Chelsea's top performers this season.
Just a quick follow-up to that. So do you think he will immediately return to the starting lineup once he's fit?
I think within reason. I mean, you never know how they manage things with fit. Like, if he's 100% fit, is he going to get in there, or does he have to be 110% fit? So let's see what happens in preseason, of course. But I think it's quite realistic that Willian's game time, even with Hazard gone, is going to have to diminish a little bit. I mean, he's totally north of 30, and so is Pedro. So I don't know, once again, how much Lampard will cater to the veterans right away. Of course, he did play with some of these guys, but I do think Callum Hudson-Odoi for the majority of the season will be a starter.
And because you just said that, let's just assume that Callum Hudson-Odoi is going to be a starter for the most part once he is fully fit, whenever that may be, whether that's, early in August, whether that's late in August, whether that's September, whenever it may be. Like you said, you're never 100% sure with these Achilles injuries. But let's just assume that he will start. Let's just assume that he will probably start on the left wing for the most part, although it probably makes a difference as to which striker we have where he should play, because if we have Giroud, he should probably play on the right because no one else except him can cross the ball.
That's true.
But who starts on the other side? Obviously, you are the American here. You probably know a lot more about Christian Pulisic than we do, because I've seen quite a lot of him at Borussia Dortmund, to be fair, but this season he's then not played that much for various reasons, obviously being injured first, and then Jadon Sancho just took his place and just was, quite remarkably good that no one really saw coming that way. I don't think so anyway. Do you expect Christian Pulisic to be the starter on the other wing then, once Hudson-Odoi is, starting on the left wing? Or do you think, obviously, like you just said, we don't know for sure, but do you personally expect it, or do you think Willian or Pedro could just stay in there and, maybe just somehow randomly have these odd good games every 5 games, and that's why they will still stay ahead of Pulisic for, some unknown reason, and it will be the same problems again, like we had on the previous managers on the Lampard? Or, what do you expect from that situation? Obviously, like I say, from being the American and knowing Christian Pulisic a bit better than I guess a lot of English people do.
Yeah, well, if you ike Christian Pulisic, if you isolate Christian Pulisic, excuse me, you just isolate him. You think about what he was bought for. You think about the fact that he really is a talented player. Yeah, his last season at Borussia Dortmund was really choppy and not all that great, but he's playing well now, and he ended the year well with Borussia Dortmund. When you isolate him, you assume he's an absolute starter, and I think that's definitely what the club wants him to be, a starter. So I do like to think that Christian Pulisic will be a starting winger, and if Hudson-Odoi is starting at left wing, I'd like to think that Christian Pulisic's the starting right winger. But here's, I guess, one thing to factor in is Chelsea, of course, are in all competitions. Obviously, we know they're in the Champions League, so they have the maximum number of games to play. So there will need to be rotation to a certain degree. And right now, Chelsea only have 4 wingers. Hudson-Odoi, who isn't fully fit, and then Pulisic, Willian, and Pedro, who are. And obviously, Willian and Pedro are north of 30. So if you make Hudson-Odoi and Christian Pulisic your consistent Premier League starters, that means when they're not starting, let's say for a cup game, so an FA Cup game, a League Cup game, Champions League, you'd like to think you go with the strong lineup, but that means when you're not starting your top 2 wingers in Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic, you're starting Willian and Pedro again for the 30th season in a row. And it's just, how many more times can we have Willian and Pedro start together on the pitch? I mean, guys, I don't even mean like total disrespect to them, but when I see them as the starting wingers, I get nauseous. It's the most boring, just mundane possible winger battery you can have. And that won't be Lampard's fault. Because what is Lampard supposed to do? He's got 4 wingers, and now we can't sell Willian and Pedro because of the transfer ban. So people who rightly put blame on the club for being in this situation squad-wise and transfer ban-wise, good on you, because Lampard has 2 attractive wingers to pick and then 2 wingers who are not all that attractive to pick. So he's either got to really rotate and really keep things fresh and get Hudson-Odoi and Pulisic in there as much as possible, but also get one of them in there for cup games. Or, he's got to roll out Willian and Pedro for the cup games, and we're not going to care about the cup games. So, obviously, I'm joking a little bit there, but there's just not much you can do. So, I do think Pulisic will be starting the majority of games at a wing position, and I do think Hudson-Odoi, assuming he's fit, will be starting the majority of games at a wing position. But maybe to avoid having Willian and Pedro as the starting wingers for cup games, he'll have to rotate them a little bit more in the Premier League.
I guess that is where the transfer ban is not a blessing in disguise, because that certainly is a problem that we're just going to have to face. That is why a lot of people, I guess, speak about it as a bit of a write-off season, and that's why a lot of people are expecting to finish anywhere between. Me personally, I think we're going to come somewhere between 6th and 9th. Like you said earlier, you don't know how good the likes of Leicester, Wolves, West Ham, whoever else is up there, Everton, are going to be. So that's why I'm not saying we're definitely going to finish 9th or 10th or whatever. But I just can't see how we, without being able to sign anybody and losing Hazard, can still finish ahead of Arsenal and Man United. If we do, remarkable. But I just cannot see that happening. So that's why, for me, it's somewhere between 6th and 9th. And, what you just mentioned, obviously, with the wingers, some Premier League games, especially when you have injuries, when you have suspensions, are going to have to be Willian, at least one of Willian and Pedro. Sometimes it might even have to be both. And, the way you and the way Jimmy and I constantly speak about them doesn't exactly fill us with a lot of hope. And then we have those games, and then we can't expect to score many points in those games. So then you can't expect us to finish, I don't know, top 4 or 5th, whatever. So it's just a bit of a, what's the English expression? Circle of death, hell, whatever you call it. It's just going round and round in circles, in a bad circle to an extent, I guess. But yeah.
Well, we do have Masonda and Kennedy, theoretically. I mean,
watch Musonda unfollow everybody again.
Yeah, that is, of course, a problem. Let's not forget that I'm not saying we all were, but a lot of people were hyping Charlie Masonda.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, nearly as much as Callum Hudson-Odoi only a few seasons ago. He was phenomenal. I mean, wasn't he like one of the young players that Messi or something said is predestined for greatness? Or was it Cristiano Ronaldo? I'm not sure. But, he's got so much skill. He had a dreadful season because of his injuries last term. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe he'll get a chance under Lampard. But I think one name that really interests me is also another academy player, Reece James. I mean, you've had the pleasure of talking to him personally, which, Alex, kudos. That is quite an achievement. That is great. What's he like as a person? I think that's what everyone would like to know. I know, you listen to the podcast episode as well, but I'm sure you will have spoken with him personally as well in private. What's he like as a person? And do you think that he'll become our starting right back next season course of the campaign?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of the question first, what is he like as a person? I mean, if you heard the episode, he's very similar to that. And obviously speaking to him offline, he's soft-spoken. He's definitely mild-mannered. He's funny, but you have to kind of listen to him because he's not a loud guy. He doesn't give you long sentences. It wasn't just, of course, on the podcast, I definitely pressed him and got as much out of him as I possibly could. And I warned him beforehand, Reece, I'm going to do that to you. And he said, that's probably best because I'm definitely soft-spoken. But I think the best way to describe him is actually the way Luke McCormick described him. Luke McCormick is a Chelsea Academy player. He's probably going out on loan this next season. I had Luke on the week before, and in talking about Reece James, he described him the same way that Reece describes himself. He says, yeah, he's kind of reserved. He's kind of composed. But when he gets on the pitch, he's an absolute animal. And I even asked Reece on the pod, do you just feel like something extra comes alive when you're on the pitch? And he said, no doubt. And so he's a very determined guy. And speaking to him a little bit throughout the season, he's just somebody who would never need to be told to give 110%. And you can just tell, maybe it's just because his father is a coach. His sister is a phenom, 2 years younger than him, and an absolute footballing phenom. So he's just from a football family. His brother played a bit. He's just somebody that you don't like the hype on Twitter or people telling him he's not going to make it, whatever it is, that just he couldn't care less about that. That's not going to stop him. So I love his attitude. And I love the fact that he is kind of mild-mannered off the pitch, but when he gets on the pitch, he can't be stopped. And probably my favorite line from the whole entire podcast with him was, I was saying, yeah, you don't really even mind speaking up and directing older players on the pitch. And he goes, if they need to be told, they need to be told. And I just think, I mean, that's, especially coming from a soft-spoken guy, that's a badass line because that shows you he does kind of have some of that future captain in him. So I love his mentality. His mentality will take him as far as he wants to go. And in terms of starting right back, I mean, right off the bat, I obviously assume that Azpilicueta is definitely going to be the starting right back. Now, Reece's injury hurts that anyway. Reece is definitely making good progress, like it seems like all of them are. Callum, Loftus-Cheek, and Reece, they all have different timetables. But I definitely think Reece will be eased in. But this is why I always would say to people that it's so paramount that he still stays and doesn't go on loan and is back up. Yeah. I mean, maybe now they have to keep Zappacosta. I don't know. That doesn't even bother me that much because I think once Reece is fit, somebody like Jody Morris and maybe just logic will push Reece at least past Zappacosta. But even getting Reece Cup games, let's say in September, October, whenever you can get him those extra games, or even as a bench appearance. I mean, who knows? Who knows if they'd even bring him on as a backup midfielder? I don't know. Just to get his feet wet in the Premier League.
True.
I think once he starts playing, he just has that talent that'll eventually be hard to ignore. And I don't know if he'll ever. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and say that by the end of the season he'll be the starting right back. But I do think this. I think he'll show enough this season that by the next season, even if Azpilicueta has a solid season, by the next season, Reece James will just be the starting right back.
I hope you're right.
Quite frankly, it only took the, I don't know, whatever, 5, 6, 7 minutes or whatever he played against the New England Revolution in that charity game. That, let's not call it a friendly because it was a charity game. It only really needed to see that to, see him be part of the Chelsea squad. I mean, of course, by then a lot of youth players had come on and Hazard wasn't there anymore, none of that stuff. But he still just stood out so much more than any of the other players that were on the pitch at that point. And of course, it was a lesser opposition than we'll face in the Premier League. But it was still quite remarkable to see a right back, to me anyway, to see a right back stand out that much. Of course, when you see him play in the Championship, you not expect maybe, but you kind of you can expect a very, very talented young player, even if he's a right back, stand out a lot more. But doing that in the Chelsea team, I thought was very impressive, and that's why, like you say, I just eventually, whether it's Jody Morris or Logic, he will probably become the starter and hopefully get as many games as possible once his injury heals up as best as can. But at the same time, same as a lot of people have done with the England under-21s performances, you can't judge on one game, and same as Chelsea fans can't judge Reece James on that 5-6 minutes against the England Revolution. But I don't think anyone's really doing that. I'm just saying because, Tammy Abraham is awful now, and he's awful just because the England under-21s didn't do great. Well, yeah, I mean, you have both sides to the story of judging by one game. But like you just said, if he does make it at Chelsea, then I think we should really start to rethink about our approach to handling youth players, because if players of his quality can't make it, there's serious issues going on, in my opinion.
I mean, don't forget.
I mean, sorry, I don't mean to cut in there. The one thing about Reece James that I think will completely make him more than ready for the next stage whenever Lampard and Morris want to give him that opportunity is his strength. I mean, I just think that he's just absolute. I mean, obviously, just look at him. He's built like a brick, but he obviously is pretty athletic as well. So you're not going to find him getting pushed around in the Premier League. And look at the strikers that Chelsea have. Let's say Azpilicueta got an injury, and obviously we would never root for an injury, but let's say he did get an injury. Reece James's game really plays well to the starting strikers that Chelsea could have, whether it's Giroud or Tammy Abraham. Both those guys want to score a dirty goal. They both want to be a poacher. They both want to live in and around the box. And what does a striker like that need? Good service and a good crossing right back. And that's exactly what Reece James is. So I keep saying it. Trent Alexander-Arnold got his opportunity because he stayed. He was a backup, and then he capitalized off of the opportunities ahead of him. Wan-Bissaka wanted to go out on loan when he was at Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson told him, no, don't go on loan. Stay here. He capitalized from an injury, and then boom, he became the starting right back. So in order to make it, you have to be there to get the opportunity. And that's why it's so crucial. That's why I was so annoying with #RecallReece, because it's just paramount that he's in the Chelsea squad this season. And if he is, he's going to make it sooner or later.
Yeah, I mean, one also has to also keep in mind, Azpilicueta, he's actually going to turn 30 in August. He ain't getting any younger either. He's be the wrong side of 30 then. We all love Azpilicueta for different reasons. He's a phenomenal vice captain. I'm not too fond of him as captain, but that's a different story entirely. However, he should get his minutes. Reece James certainly should get them. I mean, Azpilicueta wasn't phenomenal at right back. He's a solid right back, but his best positions were on the left under Mourinho, and then that three at the back under Conte. So I don't know. He had his problems at times last season on the right. So I do think that Reece James, if he lives up to the expectations that we all have for him, he can certainly put the pressure on Azpilicueta. But moving on to the next, well, not the next, but the other side of the defence, the left-back position. One youngster that left today was Jada Silva. Unfortunately, a lot of people wanted him to basically take over from Alonso, and I can't really fault them for that, because I think we share that sentiment that Marcus Alonso shouldn't be a starter for Chelsea Football Club, not anywhere near it, at least not in a four at the back. I actually rate Emerson a lot. I really, really do like him. Watched him at Roma, and he was an absolutely terrific player there. I think he can be much, much better at Chelsea than many do expect him. And I hope he plays under Lampard next season. But Jada Silva's gone. That's one option less, same as Ola Aina. I mean, what are your thoughts on his departure, Alex? Could he have played a role under Lampard? Because I'm a bit, torn on that. I don't think he would have really had a chance anyway. But what do you think?
Well, it just sucks to lose Jay Da Silva. I'm not necessarily sure he would have had a role this season because it does seem like we're a little cautious to sell anybody with the transfer ban. So even though many fans, especially myself, would love to sell Marcos Alonso and then promote Jay Da Silva and have him back up Emerson or fight with Emerson, I don't know how realistic that was. So really where we went wrong was giving Bristol City the option to buy in the first place. And yeah, sure, Jay had to agree with it, but still, look at it from Jay's perspective. Chelsea have Emerson and Marcos Alonso ahead of him. So even though it's not Maurizio Sarri anymore, who would talk about height a lot, it still means that in order for Jay Da Silva to think he has a chance of staying, he's probably, or playing and making it worth it to him, he probably needs to see at least one of those left backs leave. So I think it has much less to do with Lampard and Morris coming in and just more due to the fact that we were stupid enough a year ago to give Bristol City that option. And if you were Jay Da Silva, yeah, Bristol City's probably a little bit below your talent now. I mean, no disrespect to them. I think they're going to be a good championship squad next season, by the way. I think they'll be one of the better teams in the league. But he could probably do better than that. But on the flip, he wants to play. I mean, he wants to play. So what's he supposed to do? Stay with Chelsea and then, take a risk in doing another loan that's not going to work out as well? I mean, I know players have a lot of say in the loan, but I don't always trust Chelsea with their loans anyway. So I think with Jay, I think he thought about it. I think he definitely thought about it, but I think he just decided, you know what, I could sign with Bristol City. I'm going to be one of their best players. I'm going to get all the minutes in the world. And then maybe one good season with them. And then someone will buy me and actually give me a real job. And staying with Chelsea with Marcos Alonso and Emerson still rostered just was too big of a risk for him to take. So it sucks. And I blame Chelsea on that one.
I mean, I agree. I feel like to me, that's the perfect example of there being two sides to the story, because like you just said, with Trent Alexander-Arnold just being there and then to capitalize on it, and like Wan-Bissaka being there to just capitalize on it, he possibly could have been in that situation. Of course, we had Emerson and Alonso, but maybe just being there and then in training, Lampard would have said, well, actually, you're actually way better than Alonso, so you start. Or just going out on another loan and kind of hoping that Alonso will just be gone by next summer, and then we'll just look at him with, like I say, Jody Morris then being around and Frank Lampard being around, and then possibly looking at Jay Da Silva, after hopefully another great season, an even better season possibly, over, signing someone for 50, 60 million, because even fullbacks are now getting ridiculously expensive. And, we do know that Roman Abramovich and Chelsea don't really like to spend ridiculous amounts of money these days. I mean, we bought, both Jorginho and Kepa for loads and loads of money. But for Kepa, we're kind of forced with, Courtois leaving. And then Jorginho was just like a welcome gift to Maurizio Sarri, I guess. But would they pay that for a fullback? You never know. So I guess he could have tried that, but for me, it's just fair play. I mean, he wants to, just try that out and do, his full permanent move to Bristol City. And I wish him all the best, really. That's all we can say. And, we don't have that much longer to go today. So let's just kind of move through the what do I want to say? Kind of the formation, the lineup a little bit quicker, and talk about the midfield. Obviously, you've spoken a lot about Mason Mount. You've spoken to, Mason Mount's father, you yourself, Alex. And of course, we have Ruben Loftus-Cheek there with his also Achilles injury. Who knows when he'll be back? Probably a little bit later than Callum Hudson-Odoi from what we're hearing anyway. But then we have the discussion of Mateo Kovacic. Now, of course, it seems like we have until Monday or until including Sunday to sign him. And with everyone that we have around, obviously, you've tweeted about it not long ago, actually, before recording this, your opinions on it. But if you just want to elaborate, do you think we should keep him? And you actually mentioned in your tweet, you mentioned Bakayoko. Do you think Bakayoko should be someone that we bring back just to have him around as an option? Or would you just try to get rid of him, sell him, loan him, whatever? And then, also what role do you see Mason Mount take? Of course, you said if he does well, and then possibly replace Barkley by next summer. Or do you see any sort of chance of Lampard actually using him as the straight backup to Loftus-Cheek once Loftus-Cheek is back fit?
So I'll tackle kind of each area as I go here. So let's start with Mason Mount and Barkley. Mason Mount and Barkley. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lampard also likes Barkley a little bit, but I think there's no question that Lampard likes Mason Mount. I think there's no question that Lampard has Mason Mount in his plans. So that's obviously something to be excited for Mason Mount fans. And I definitely do think that Lampard is not going to let Mason Mount rot. He's not just going to include him and then not play him. So I definitely think you definitely will. Because, guys, I know it sounds silly, but Lampard also likes Mason Mount on a personal level. So the last thing he's going to do is have Mason Mount just sit there game after game after game, not playing. So he's not going to want that to happen to Mason. And if he thought that would happen, as much as he'd want to include him, he would tell him to accept the loan. So I definitely think you'll see Mason Mount play as a bench contributor to start. And I think it'll become probably an open competition as the season goes on between him and Barkley. But obviously Loftus-Cheek will then cloud that. And thankfully he'll cloud that, because I think we all can agree Loftus-Cheek, well, I mean, he's one of our absolute best players, and his injury was just the worst, the absolute worst. So it's tough to know, once again, based on the formation, the way I'm answering this midfield question, we just don't know what the formation is going to be. Is it going to be a 4-3-3? Is it going to be a 4-2-3-1? But I'm excited to see the competition between Mason Mount and Barkley, but I think that it's a no-brainer that when Loftus-Cheek is fit, he's the starter. And if it's only one spot that the three of them have to fight for, I think it's obviously a no-brainer that goes to Loftus-Cheek. So N'Golo Kante, I mean, every single manager is starting N'Golo Kante. We just don't know if it's going to be in a pivot in a 4-2-3-1, or is it going to be kind of in the same position that he was last year, just maybe a slightly different role, because it's not quote-unquote Sarri ball. Jorginho, you got to think that Jorginho is still going to start once again, whether it's in a pivot in a 4-2-3-1, or whether he's just the middle center mid in the 4-3-3. And he might just not be the Regista, but still could be very similar. So it gets down to Kovacic and Bakayoko. So, yeah, I tweeted that about Kovacic, about how, in my opinion, Mateo Kovacic is an enigma. Nobody knows. Well, I'm not saying nobody. Maybe you guys do. And I probably don't. But I don't think many people actually judge Mateo Kovacic accurately. I think he's underrated by some, because I think some people say that he doesn't score at all, so he's trash. And I think he's overrated by a lot of people as well, because he can dribble nice and he's press resistant and he has a good passing accuracy. I think he's somewhere in between. I really think he's a hard player to judge. I think most of us can agree that he's much more useful further back. I think last year having him in such an advanced position was just useless. I mean, one goal, and this is what I tweeted. So a lot of people thought I was against signing him, and I guess I purposely didn't write my opinion there just to ruffle some feathers and to make people think that I didn't want to sign him. Every once in a while, I just kind of want to have some fun.
That is why Mr. Alex Goldberg has 65,000 followers.
So, yeah, I just decided to write, what concerns me is that he has one goal in the last 105 league games. Now, I understand.
I got it was 0 goals, but fair play.
Yeah, one, and that was a couple seasons ago. Okay, so 1 goal in the last 105 league games. Guys, that's atrocious. I mean, that is absolutely bottom of the trash barrel bad. And I know I got so many replies, once again, from accounts that I'm very friendly with, that I have really good, respectful debates with. I get so many replies saying irrelevant because he's going to be a DM in a 4-2-3-1. Fine, and that will soften the blow. So he'll be a backup, by the way, in a 4-2-3-1. And you're going to be paying a premium for him, which I don't love paying for a backup. But fine, Chelsea clearly needs some bodies in the midfield. We don't have that many, especially with Loftus-Cheek injured. So fine. But don't I still have the right for Mateo Kovacic to maybe improve his weaknesses? Just because he's a DM, couldn't he be a little bit more capable? Because newsflash, unless you're Sergio Busquets, it would be nice if a DM could still at least be a threat to put in the ball in the back of the net. Mateo Kovacic is allergic to doing that. So I'm not saying that I don't want to re-sign Mateo Kovacic. I actually am saying I do want to, but I don't think it's a no-brainer. And I think people are vastly overrating Mateo Kovacic. And I saw like 4 accounts before I got on this podcast say that 50 million for Mateo Kovacic is a bargain. And I'm sorry, that is absolutely laughable. That is not true at all. So the reason why I'm in favor of re-signing Mateo Kovacic is he does have quality. He does have quality. He's not a scrub. He does have experience. He is better in a deeper role, and that's where I hope he will be, especially if it's a 4-2-3-1. And once again, Chelsea need bodies. And Bakayoko, okay, he had a good year at Milan. So I'm not saying he's trash. Far from it. But with Bakayoko, I think it's a situation where you need to have foresight, and you need to realize that some players might be better in other leagues, and it doesn't mean they're garbage, but they might not be cut out for the league or the team that you have envisioned. And that year was so damaging. That year was so damaging the other year at Chelsea that I don't think really he's going to have the mental fortitude to have a successful season at Chelsea. I think it was traumatizing for him. And I think the moment he has a bad game, it's going to get nasty. And I think it's probably better for Chelsea to sell high on him because, once again, he's coming off a good season at Milan. So despite the transfer ban, I would still sell high on him, and I would keep Kovacic.
That is interesting. I mean, I do completely agree on the Kovacic part of the discussion. I mean, I think we can all agree that Danny Drinkwater should be gotten rid of as soon as possible. I think everyone agrees on that. Then to me, it's just a question of, with Bakayoko, it's just a, of course, you could probably make good money on it. It's probably what we should have done with Batshuayi after his Dortmund spell, just sold him then, because then we probably would have made, I don't know, 60, 70 million on him. Well, now he's barely worth 40 million and will probably be around as something. Who knows what he'll be around for. But as for Bakayoko, to me, it's just like, I don't want to be in a situation again of what we feared to be in for the Europa League final when we weren't sure whether Kante would be available. When we had Ruben Loftus-Cheek injured and Kante possibly injured, and we were like, oh, we actually only have 3 more midfielders. Well, we're a bit screwed here. So that's the only reason why I was like, might as well just keep Bakayoko around. If he doesn't play, he doesn't play. Who cares? But except Kante, who really can defend in that midfield then? And Bakayoko is pretty damn poor on the ball, but he can defend and he has a body. And Frank Lampard is certainly more defensively adaptable than Maurizio Sarri was, and he does, when need be, doesn't mind seeing a game out. And for seeing a game out, someone like Bakayoko in your midfield really isn't a bad thing to have, whether it's for defending corners, whether it's for defending long balls, whether it's for defending free kicks from random positions, because you just give away silly free kicks when the other team is pressing you towards the end of the game. He's not a bad player to have in your squad, in my opinion, that you just bring on for Jorginho, that you bring on for a Kovacic or whoever. Of course, you have Ruben, who's very tall and strong, but he's not exactly a defensive monster. He can be, but that's not the side of his game that I want to be, especially developed, in all honesty, because I think he can be way more important for us in the attacking phase, I guess. So that's just what kind of the way that I look at it. I understand if everyone disagrees with that, but that's the only reason why I personally would keep him. But I think, Jimmy, you said you wouldn't keep him, or would you? What was it again? Sorry, I can't remember.
Well, the thing was that, because you mentioned him with his body, he has got the right body for that kind of defensive work, but the problem was that he wasn't using it, similar to Matic's last season at Chelsea, and also partially now at Man United. It's no point being built perfectly for that role if you're not going to use the body. And he was poor in that phase, and he did have a good spell at Milan, but then his form dipped again, and consistency has been such a important thing for Chelsea, and we've struggled with that. And Kovacic, I think he can do that defensive work just as much, even if he hasn't got the height. But problem I have with buying Kovacic, and that was the one, not as much Bakayoko, because we've got him on our books one way or another. If we keep him or not, as you said, who cares? Just to have another body in there. But with Kovacic, we wouldn't pay 50 mil if we didn't have this ban. And that's the thing that bugs me. And I know that it's a different situation because of that. But I don't know. That's the big problem I have with Kovacic. I get that we have to buy him, but is the price. We're getting bullied in this, and Marina's hard negotiating is coming back to haunt us, really. But that's just the way it is. I think as we're coming to the end of the podcast, I want to ask you some, just very brief 2 questions, Alex, where we'll just try and keep it short. Tammy Abraham, Michy Batshuayi, and Olivier Giroud. Those are our 3 striking options next season. Who would be your choice and why? And then generally, what would your preferred starting lineup be? Because we've spoken about the striking position in our last 2 episodes, and we've been very split on that. Lawrence has an agenda against Olivier Giroud. I personally do prefer Tammy Abraham because he's the best mix of both. We've also had someone already say Batshuayi is the perfect poacher. So what would your choice be?
so damn tough. I mean, it's so tough because I think I can make arguments for all three. I won't. I'll give you more of a short answer. I want to say Tammy Abraham. He's not perfect. I don't think Tammy's in the same tier as a Hudson-Odoi or Reece James or anything like that. But I think the positives of Tammy Abraham, if they click, they could be very positive. The fact that he does just score. I mean, that's all he knows how to do is score. He's got a great poacher's attitude, and if you put the right people around him who can cross in the ball, then like a Hudson-Odoi and a Reece James, that would be great. But I think then he can really be at his best. And Tammy wants to play for Chelsea so flipping bad. I mean, he wants to be a Chelsea player so badly, and I admire that. So I know we can't overvalue passion and personality, but when your options are Giroud, Abraham, and Batshuayi, maybe that's your tiebreaker. So I want to say Tammy, but there is this unknown with Michy Batshuayi at this point that is a little intriguing because if you look at his goals per minutes, it's actually really good. So I just don't know. I mean, I kind of just wish Giroud never re-signed. He never was extended for a season because, and that's no disrespect to Giroud, because guess what? He's probably the safest bet because you at least know what you're getting at is Giroud. So I'm not really even disrespecting him, but it'd be a less of a headache if Giroud just wasn't extended because then you knew, all right, Batshuayi and Abraham, one of them will click. And they both have good potential. And Batshuayi's older. Yeah, he's 4 years older or something. But he still has potential there that's ready to be unlocked. And I'd like to get one more try out of Michy. I mean, he's still barely played in a Chelsea shirt. So I wouldn't be against it. So I would love for it just to be Batshuayi and Abraham and play it really, really risky. I know that's risky, trust me. But I feel like one of them would click. But if you just have to put a gun to my head and say pick one out of the three, I'll pick Tammy.
It'd be nice to have three strikers for the first time since 5 years. And I absolutely echo your sentiment with Tammy. Definitely.
But yeah, very, very interesting. Expertise by Mr. Alex Goldberg. And I think that is where we're going to leave it today. Alex, thank you for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Of course, do plug yourself, whatever you want to plug, your Twitter, your YouTube, your podcast, whatever you do want to plug yourself now. The links to everything will be down in the description below. And yeah, just go for it, Alex.
All right, appreciate that. So you can find me on Twitter at @AlexGoldberg_. I always say proceed with caution on that one. And on the podcast, that's definitely the one that I probably would plug first and foremost. So that's the Byline Podcast. You can find that on patreon.com. But instead of figuring out how to spell that, just go to my Twitter and it's in my bio. And that definitely is popping out 2 episodes a week. So that's pretty active. The non-active thing is my YouTube channel right now. For many reasons, professional and personal, I kind of had to put that on hold, but that will be back definitely by mid-July, maybe even early July. So that's only a couple weeks from now. And that's the Byline on YouTube. So the Byline is pretty much where you can find me anywhere.
You know, Mr. Alex Goldberg, the Byline, basically. But yeah, that is where you can find Alex. Please do find him. And of course, like Jimmy said in the beginning of the podcast, do also subscribe to our channel, to the Attacking 2 podcast on YouTube. Follow us on iTunes. Give us a good rating there. Obviously, the Spotify. Just listen to us wherever you want, whether you're in the car, whether you're at home, whether you're at school and not listening. I don't really care. Just listen to our podcast. It's fine by me. And yeah, of course, like Jimmy said as well, follow our Twitters, our personal Twitters, and the Attacking 2 Twitter handle is also down in the description below. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching wherever you did consume our podcast. Again, thank you, Alex, for coming on. We're going to leave it there. Up the Chelsea and keep the blue flag flying high.